This is impossible! Captain Jake Morrison's voice cracked with 6 hours of mounting frustration across the tarmac at Nellis Air Force Base. The 29-year-old F-16 pilot stood in full flight gear, staring at the multi-million-dollar Fighting Falcon that had suffered complete engine failure during routine training. The Pratt & Whitney F-100 turbofan engine sat silent and cold, refusing every restart attempt despite emergency landing procedures. Technical Sergeant Rodriguez and his crew of avionics specialists surrounded the fighter like surgeons around a patient they couldn't save. Diagnostic computers, electronic test equipment, and advanced troubleshooting systems covered every available surface, but 6 hours of analysis had produced nothing but frustration. Harold Hank Morrison had been watching the Air Force technicians' futile efforts from his position near the maintenance hangar. At 77 years old, he looked exactly like his identification claimed, a civilian contractor responsible for general aircraft maintenance. His weathered hands, stained with decades of hydraulic fluid and JP-8 fuel, gripped a simple red toolbox containing basic hand tools that most modern technicians considered obsolete. He wore his usual faded red work shirt that had survived more wash cycles than most airmen had deployments, blue jeans with permanent grease stains, and worn steel-toed boots. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and his pale blue eyes held the quiet intelligence of someone who had spent a lifetime making complex machines work properly. Staff Sergeant Chen wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving streaks in the hydraulic fluid covering his face. "Sir, we've run every diagnostic in the technical orders. All systems show green, but she won't even attempt to start. No JFS engagement, no core rotation, nothing." The other technicians nodded grimly, their expensive electronic equipment scattered around like remnants of a failed siege. These weren't ordinary maintenance personnel. They were certified on the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world, men who had trained for years on systems representing the pinnacle of aerospace engineering. Morrison had been employed at Nellis for 12 years, maintaining aircraft that defended American airspace. He was invisible to most pilots and technicians, just another aging contractor keeping facilities clean around the flight line. The Air Force personnel had barely acknowledged his presence during their 6-hour battle, treating him with casual dismissal that young warriors often showed elderly civilians. Morrison understood their attitude. He had been exactly where they were, though it felt like several lifetimes ago. Captain Morrison finally noticed the old man standing nearby with his cleaning supplies. "Sir, this is a restricted flight line area. You need to clear the area until we resolve this maintenance issue." Morrison nodded politely but made no move to leave. "Just watching, son. That's quite a bird you've got there. F-16C Block 50 if I'm not mistaken." His voice carried calm authority that seemed out of place from a maintenance worker. Captain Morrison's patience was wearing thin after hours of failure and pressure from squadron leadership. "Sir, I need you to move to a safe distance. We're conducting advanced troubleshooting procedures on classified systems." Morrison nodded politely but made no move to leave. "Just watching, son. That's quite a bird you've got there. F-16C Block 50 if I'm not mistaken." His voice carried calm authority that seemed out of place from a maintenance worker. Captain Morrison's patience was wearing thin after hours of failure and pressure from squadron leadership. "Sir, I need you to move to a safe distance. We're conducting advanced troubleshooting procedures on classified systems." Morrison walked closer to the F-16, his eyes scanning the aircraft with methodical attention of someone conducting professional assessment. "Mind if I ask what symptoms you're seeing when you attempt engine start?" Captain Morrison's jaw tightened with mounting frustration. "Sir, that's classified maintenance information. This is Air Force business, and you need to clear the area immediately." Morrison remained where he was, studying the fighter with patient attention of someone who had seen similar problems before. "JFS won't engage, or JFS spins but no core light off?" Morrison asked quietly, his technical language causing several technicians to pause their work. Technical Sergeant Rodriguez looked up from his diagnostic computer with surprise. "How would you know about jet fuel starter procedures, old man?" Morrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. The slight slouch of an elderly maintenance worker straightened into something that looked suspiciously like military bearing. "I've worked on similar systems before, son. Different conflicts, different bases, but same basic principles." Captain Morrison's patience finally snapped. "Sir, I don't care what systems you think you've worked on. This is an F-16 Fighting Falcon, not some civilian aircraft." Morrison's mind suddenly drifted to another time, another place entirely. The Nevada desert faded away, replaced by the controlled chaos of a forward operating base in Saudi Arabia. He wasn't 77 anymore. He was 35, a master sergeant with the 363rd Tactical Fighter Wing, responsible for keeping F-16's flying combat missions during Operation Desert Storm. The year was 1991, and Morrison was part of the Coalition Air Campaign, maintaining fighter aircraft under combat conditions where mechanical failure meant more than mission delays. It meant pilot lives and critical air support for ground forces advancing into Kuwait. In that desert war, Morrison had earned a reputation as the crew chief who could fix anything with whatever tools were available. When electronic diagnostics failed and computer systems provided no answers, wing commanders called for Morrison. He had an intuitive understanding of F-16 systems that went beyond technical manuals and diagnostic procedures. Morrison remembered one particular night when an F-16 had suffered identical symptoms: complete electrical failure with no apparent cause, diagnostic computers showing normal readings, and frustrated technicians unable to identify the problem. While others relied on electronic test equipment, Morrison had traced the problem to a simple circuit breaker that had popped during high-G maneuvering but wasn't visible on standard checks. Back on the Nevada flight line, Morrison's eyes slowly refocused on the young airmen surrounding him. "Son," Morrison said again, his voice carrying quiet authority that made nearby personnel stop their activities. "Sometimes the simplest problems hide behind the most complex symptoms. Have you checked all your circuit breakers? Not just the obvious ones, the hidden panel behind the left knee." Staff Sergeant Chen's head snapped up. "What hidden panel?" Morrison smiled with the expression of someone who knew these aircraft intimately. "The auxiliary electrical panel. It's tucked behind the map case. Easy to miss during pre-flight, easier to pop during aggressive maneuvering." The confrontation had reached what appeared to be an absolute stalemate when Airman First Class Martinez made a decision that would fundamentally change everything. "Sergeant," Martinez said carefully to Rodriguez, "what if I contact maintenance control just to verify his credentials?" Rodriguez nodded curtly, thinking this would finally resolve the situation and prove the old man was confused about his expertise. Martinez walked toward communications equipment, but instead of calling maintenance control immediately, he decided to contact Chief Master Sergeant Valdez at Wing Headquarters first. "Chief, this is Martinez on the flight line," he said when Valdez answered. "We have a developing situation with an elderly civilian contractor claiming knowledge of F-16 systems. Says his name is Harold Morrison, and he's suggesting we check some auxiliary electrical panel that's not in our technical orders." There was an unusually long pause on the other end of the line, so long that Martinez wondered if the connection had been lost. When Chief Master Sergeant Valdez finally spoke again, his voice carried tension Martinez had never heard before. "Martinez, did you say Harold Morrison, working on an F-16? The silence stretched for 5 full seconds. "Sweet Mother of God," Valdez said, and Martinez could hear papers rustling frantically in the background. "Martinez, listen to me very carefully and do exactly what I tell you. Do not allow anyone to lay a single hand on Harold Morrison. Do you understand me completely? Not a single finger on that man." Martinez felt his stomach drop into his boots. In 4 years of knowing Chief Valdez, he had never heard him sound genuinely panicked about anything. "Chief, what's happening here?"
I need to make several urgent phone calls immediately. Martinez, that man is definitely not a confused civilian contractor. Keep the entire situation completely calm and respectful until I can get there personally. Morrison had quietly approached the F-16's cockpit area and was examining something behind the pilot's left knee with practiced efficiency. "There's your problem, son," Morrison said to Captain Morrison, pointing to a small circuit breaker that had indeed popped but was completely hidden behind the map case mounting. "This little guy controls auxiliary power to your engine control systems. Pop it during high-G maneuvering and your FADEC won't talk to your JFS. Everything shows green because the main systems are fine, but the handshake never happens." Staff Sergeant Chen stared at the popped breaker with amazement. "That's not even in our troubleshooting checklist. How did you know to look there?" Morrison smiled with patient understanding. "Because I helped write the original maintenance procedures for this aircraft when it was still in development. That breaker was added as a safety feature, but it's positioned where normal pre-flight checks don't catch it." Before anyone could respond, they all heard the unmistakable sound of multiple vehicles approaching at high speed across the base. Heavy engines, moving fast, coming up the flight line access road toward their position. The distinctive whine of turbocharged diesel engines pushed to their absolute limits, creating dust clouds visible from miles away. Morrison remained exactly where he had been throughout the entire confrontation, patient and methodical, still pointing to the hidden circuit breaker. But something subtle in his expression had changed slightly. There was the faintest suggestion of a knowing smile.
The convoy screeched to a halt near the aircraft with the urgency of a national security response. Heavy doors slammed simultaneously, and the sound of military boots on tarmac echoed across the suddenly silent flight line. Captain Morrison stood frozen as senior personnel emerged from vehicles with purpose and authority that made his stomach drop. Chief Master Sergeant Valdez stepped out quickly from the lead vehicle, followed by several other senior NCOs Morrison didn't recognize. But everyone's attention immediately focused on the second vehicle, where a two-star general was climbing out with an expression of profound respect mixed with urgency. Major General Patricia Hayes was 58 years old and commanded the 57th Wing at Nellis Air Force Base, overseeing all advanced fighter training operations. Her unexpected personal arrival at a routine maintenance issue was unprecedented, causing every airman on the flight line to snap to attention. General Hayes walked directly toward Morrison, completely ignoring Captain Morrison and the technicians as if they were invisible obstacles. When General Hayes reached Morrison's position beside the F-16, something remarkable happened. The general came to rigid attention and rendered the sharpest, most precise salute that anyone present had ever witnessed in their entire military careers. "Chief Master Sergeant Harold Morrison, United States Air Force, retired," General Hayes said, her voice booming across the suddenly silent flight line with authority that made every person present freeze in place. "Sir, on behalf of the United States Air Force, I apologize for the inexcusable disrespect shown to you here today." Morrison slowly returned the salute from his position beside the aircraft, movement still precise despite his age. "General, no apology necessary. These airmen were following established maintenance procedures and protecting their aircraft." The general held her salute for 5 full seconds before dropping her hand with military precision. Captain Morrison felt his knees go weak as reality crashed over him like a cold wave. Chief Master Sergeant was the highest enlisted rank in the Air Force, reserved for airmen with decades of exceptional service and technical expertise. He had been missing a living legend, a man whose technical knowledge had literally helped develop the aircraft he was now struggling to repair. General Hayes turned to address the stunned maintenance crew and flight line personnel who had gathered to witness the unprecedented scene. "Airmen, allow me to introduce Chief Master Sergeant Harold Wrench Morrison. He holds the Air Force record for fastest combat aircraft repair. 11 minutes to restore an F-16 to mission-ready status during Operation Desert Storm while under enemy artillery fire. He is also a recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star Medal, and 4 Air Force Commendation Medals." The technician stood frozen as the implication sank in.
They had been dismissing a living legend, an airman whose technical expertise was literally incorporated into the maintenance procedures they used daily. General Hayes continued, her voice growing more respectful. Chief Morrison's innovations in F-16 maintenance procedures saved countless aircraft and pilot lives during Desert Storm. His ability to diagnose complex problems using fundamental principles rather than electronic diagnostics is unparalleled in Air Force history. Morrison shifted uncomfortably, clearly uncomfortable with the public praise. General, these young airmen just need to understand that aircraft systems follow logical principles. When electronics fail, you go back to basics.
Morrison reached into his simple toolbox and withdrew a basic screwdriver. "Captain, if you'd reset that circuit breaker, we can see if she'll start." Captain Morrison climbed into the cockpit with trembling hands, still processing the revelation that he had been dismissing the most accomplished aircraft maintainer in Air Force history. Morrison pushed the hidden breaker with a soft click, then gestured toward the engine start panel. "Now try your normal start sequence, JFS first, then when you get core rotation, advance to idle." Captain Morrison initiated the startup sequence with newfound respect and attention to detail. The jet fuel starter engaged immediately with its characteristic high-pitched whine, spinning up to operational speed. For the first time in 6 hours, the engine instruments showed signs of life. Core rotation began, and within seconds, the massive Pratt & Whitney engine roared to life with a sound that vibrated through the entire flight line. The F-16 settled into a smooth, powerful idle that filled the area with the unmistakable sound of a properly functioning fighter aircraft. Spontaneous applause broke out from the assembled airmen who had witnessed the impossible. A 6-hour maintenance nightmare solved with a basic screwdriver and fundamental knowledge. General Hayes looked at Morrison with something approaching awe. "Chief Morrison, you've just demonstrated why experience and fundamental understanding matter more than the most sophisticated diagnostic equipment." Morrison closed his simple toolbox with the same methodical precision he had shown throughout the encounter. "General, these young airmen have excellent training and sophisticated tools. They just needed to remember that aircraft are mechanical systems first, electronic systems second." Captain Morrison climbed down from the cockpit, his face showing a mixture of embarrassment and newfound respect. "Chief Morrison, I was completely out of line. I apologize for my disrespect and failure to recognize your expertise and service." Morrison gave him a tired but genuine smile that held no trace of anger or resentment. "Son, you were protecting your aircraft and following established procedures. That's exactly what a good pilot should do. The system failed you by not properly briefing you on my background and capabilities." General Hayes reached into her briefcase and withdrew a small wooden box. Morrison's eyes widened slightly as he recognized it. "Chief Morrison, this belongs to you. It was lost in the Pentagon mail system for 25 years and finally found its way to my desk last month." She opened the box, revealing the Air Force Cross, one of the service's highest decorations for extraordinary heroism. "Heroes like you don't get forgotten, Chief Morrison. They just get temporarily misplaced by bureaucracy." General Hayes carefully pinned the medal to Morrison's faded red work shirt, the silver cross looking oddly appropriate against the humble fabric. As Morrison prepared to return to his maintenance duties, now wearing the Air Force Cross on his work shirt, Captain Morrison finally understood that true expertise often comes disguised as ordinary competence. The greatest technicians are those who understand fundamental principles rather than just operating advanced equipment. Morrison shouldered his simple toolbox with the same dignity he had carried throughout the encounter, preparing to continue his quiet service while carrying the satisfaction of teaching a new generation that sometimes the oldest knowledge solves the newest problems.